Rod Slappy. Rod Slappy, a junior high school student, is on his way from art class to shop. At age 13, he is 6 feet 1 inch tall. He weighs 190 pounds. Rod's attitude is as scary as his size. He enjoys the impression he makes as he walks down the hall. He wants to see fear in other students' eyes. He wants to see them moving out of his way or approaching him with respect. A girl named Charlene Hill speaks to Rod. She likes him, that is clear. He kind of likes her too. He often teases her about her long, skinny arms and legs. His nickname for her is Spider. He calls her that now. She answers back with her own teasing insult. Rod's voice rises. Charlene is not supposed to speak to him like that, but she keeps coming back. Her voice grows louder too. Soon the two are shouting at one another. Their cursing fills the halls of the school. Other students gather around to watch and listen. A man pushes his way through the crowd. It is Mr. Turner, a social studies teacher. He knows Rod, of course. All the teachers at Myrtle Avenue Junior High know Rod. When a student has been suspended from elementary school 52 times, as Rod has, teachers generally hear about it. But Mr. Turner has always been on pretty good terms with Rod. He seems to see a spark of promise in the young boy. Mr. Turner lays a hand on Rod's arm. He politely suggests that Rod move on to shop class. If Rod, Charlene, and Mr. Turner were the only people around, Rod might do as Mr. Turner asked. But there is a crowd watching. Rod doesn't want anyone to say he let a teacher disrespect him. Rod turns on Mr. Turner and pushes him hard. The teacher stumbles into the crowd of students. Then he comes back at Rod. Mr. Turner is a strong man. He grabs Rod's collar and begins to pull him towards the principal's office. Rod breaks away and pushes Mr. Turner again. The fight goes on for several minutes. Finally, a security guard arrives and helps Mr. Turner get control of Rod. Later that day, Rod is sitting in the superintendent's office. His mother is there too. She has been called away from her job. A folder lies on the desk before them. It contains dozens of papers. The papers report Rod's suspensions from school. They tell of his fights with other students. Now, a newspaper lies on top of the folder. It describes Rod's attack on a teacher. The superintendent is speaking to Rod's mother. We will not accept Rod in this school district ever again, he tells her. You'll have to find another willing to take him. Rod looks at his mother's face. He is dismayed by what he sees. He has been in trouble many times in the past, but until today he has known that she believed in him. She always had hope that he would do better, but today her face is hopeless. She cannot ask Rod to be given another chance. Not with that overflowing folder lying there for everyone to see. All she can do is drop her head and cry. She has to accept the fact that her son may be lost. 14 years later, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer is visiting an unusual 5th grade class in Camden, New Jersey. There are 31 students there. All are boys. All have a hard time in school in the past. All have had a hard time in school in the past. Some have failed many of their classes. Others are always getting into fights. Some skip school frequently. These boys are students in a program called the Urban Males Class. They study reading and arithmetic like other 5th graders, but they talk about many other things too. They talk about Malcolm X and Snoop Doggy Dogg. They learn about family planning and how to choose healthy foods. They talk about what a man owes to his wife, his children, and his community. They learn, as the Inquirer reporter writes, that street smarts don't have to cancel out school smarts. The program works. The Inquirer article says after just 5 months in class, the boys no longer scrap during recess or squabble during lessons. They sit up tall and straight in their chairs. They dress smartly in uniforms of blue pants, white shirts, and ties, and they daily recite the urban male oath from memory, with shouting the words proudly. The responsibilities of a man are God. Without God, a man is still God without man is still God, but man without God is nothing. Family. A spiritual man makes a family complete. Education. Knowledge is power. Job. A man who doesn't work should not eat. Nutrition, the body is a temple. Exercise, exercise cleanses the mind. One of the urban male students, Justin Coleman, reports on what he's learned from the class. If we get into a fight somewhere, we learn how to just walk away. To be a man, you don't have to fight, and to go around with different girls. Khadijah Muhammad has 2 sons in the class, Benny and Talib. She says, our children, a lot of them are lost. There are 11 and 12-year-olds selling drugs on corners. We need some programs like this. We need more teachers like Mr. Slappy. She said, Mr. Slappy. In fact, it's the same Rod Slappy who 14 years before spent more time in detention hall than in class. It's the same Rod Slappy who was in more than 100 fights in elementary school and who was told by his home school district, go away and never come back. Now, Rod Slappy is back in school, standing in front of 31 boys, and these days he's dressed in a dark suit, white shirt, and tie. He's a graduate of a high-class Pennsylvania college. His ideas about education have been praised by the governor of New Jersey. He's married now. He and his wife are saving money, building a home together, hoping to start a family somewhere down the road. What happened to Rod Slappy in the past 14 years? How could he have changed so much? Much of the credit belongs to Rod himself. Even when he was in constant trouble, he had many good qualities. He was born with plenty of intelligence, charm, and ability. I was always a focused kid, he says today. The question was, what would I focus on? Until he was kicked out of junior high, Rod's main interest was clear. He wanted to be impressive on the street. His hero was a neighborhood man named Lonnie. Lonnie represented what I wanted at that time, Rod says. He had lots of girls, lots of gold, flashy cars. I romanticized him. I wanted that career path. I wanted to walk down the street and hear people say, don't mess with him. But even then, Rod was attracted to another example. That was Lonnie's brother, Mark. Mark was a lawyer. Mark was a complete opposite of Lonnie, Rod says. He had a good job. He had a home in the suburbs. My mother was in love with Mark and all he stood for. Rod remembers how Mark would come visit the neighborhood. He'd ease over to speak to me, ask what I was up to. There was a tug of war between those 2 images in my mind. Mark had the suit, the home, the family, the job. Lonnie had all the flash. Today, Lonnie is doing prison time for rape. Rod still sees Mark from time to time. Mark tells me he is proud of me. He didn't think I was listening to what he had to say. Rod says Mark was part of a chain of caring adults. They were people who pulled me along. They tried to help me handle the twists and turns of life. There were such adults in Rod's life before his fight with Mr. Turner. They were like the teacher who once told him, Rod, if you ever get your head screwed on right, you're going to set fire to this world. But after being expelled from junior high, Rod thought that chain had reached its end. Who would ever believe in him again? The answer to Rod's question was found in St. Benedict's School. It was an all-boys school run by a group of monks in Newark, New Jersey. The school agreed to take Rod in for a trial period. If he did well during the summer, he could stay. Rod was relieved to be accepted at St. Benedict's. However, as he says today, old ways are hard to change. He behaved well at the school for 2 weeks, then he began to tease another student. His name was Luis, but the boys called him Panama because he came from that country. One afternoon, when the English teacher was out of the room, Rod called Panama a punk. Panama argued with Rod. Rod kicked Panama in the stomach. Panama picked up a chair and threw it at Rod. Rod threw it back. Several windows were soon shadowed by the flying chair. By the time a teacher ran in and stopped the fight, the floor was covered with broken glass. Rod was sent to the headmaster's office. Rod sat in the office. He knew he'd ruined his chance to stay at St. Benedict's. He knew he had destroyed his mother's final hope. He stared at the floor until he heard the swish of the monk's robes beside him. He looked at the face of the headmaster, Father Edwin Leahy. Then he glanced nervously away. He stole another look. Slowly he realized that Father Edwin was not looking at him with disgust. He didn't even look angry. Instead, his eyes shone with hope and patience. He spoke gently to Rod. "You are an intelligent young man," he said. "Don't fight anymore. Go upstairs and sweep up that glass, then get back to class." In a daze, Rod took the broom and dustpan Father Edwin was holding out to him. Finally, he asked, "Aren't you going to suspend me? Aren't you going to tell me I'll never amount to anything?" Father Edwin shook his head. "No," he answered. "I don't believe in children missing school. You're going to be something great someday. Now go sweep up that glass." Father Edwin never mentioned the fight again. When he'd see me in the hall, he'd just say, "Hi, Rod, how are you doing?" Rod remembers. If he saw me working in class, he'd lay his hand on my shoulder and say, You're going to do fine." Rod realized that Father Edwin was telling him what Father Edwin was telling him. The headmaster was making Rod an offer. He would gladly forget about Rod's past forever if Rod wanted to change. That offer impressed Rod. He decided he would not let Father Edwin down. He completed the summer term with 2 B's and 2 C's. 4 years later, he graduated from St. Benedict's with a B+ average. He had earned a varsity letter in basketball and done well on his college entrance test. He was accepted by some of the best colleges in the country. He had chose to attend Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. At Franklin and Marshall, Rod faced new struggles. He was competing against students from wealthy, well-educated families. Sometimes it was difficult to keep up. Not everyone at the college was encouraging. I had one professor say to me, "What are you doing here? You don't belong in this school," Rod said. Rod is an African American, and Franklin and Marshall is a largely white school. But he says, "I think that kind of reaction was less a racial thing than a class thing." It was like they were saying, "You're from New York, you're from the projects, you don't fit in." At the same time, Rod was discovering that he loved sociology. "I had a knack for it. I was a good observer of human behavior," he says. His sociology professor encouraged him. "They pushed me hard," Rod remembers. "They talked to me as if I was a Harvard professor. They saw that my writing skills weren't sharp, and they made me realize I had to do better. My papers would come back again and again and again, but through it all, they believed in me. They made me realize I can do this. I can succeed in this world." One of Rod's sociology professors was Catherine McClellan. She helped him develop the idea for the Urban Males class he teaches today. Rod had been working in a management training program at AT&T. "I was making lots of money, but I was bored to tears," he says. Professor McClellan asked him, "What do you really want to do?" Rod told her. "I want to work with kids who are like I was," she told him. She told him, "Go do it." She began sending him articles about city kids and their needs. Rod put together a proposal for the Urban Males program. The Camden City School District accepted it. As Rod now moves through his Camden classroom, he feels those 31 pairs of eyes upon him. He is aware of the responsibility he carries. He remembers what it's like to be an inner city boy whose father isn't around. "I love my mom, but at a certain age a boy wants his father," Rod says, his eyes sad with the memories. "I was really angry that he wasn't around. I was angrier still when he died. There was so much I wanted to know from my dad. I wanted to see how his hair grew because that's what my hair would be like someday. I wanted to see his hands because that's what my hands would look like. I wanted to watch him walk to see if my strides could match his. I wanted to know what I would be like, and I thought only he could show me." Today, Rod provides such glimpses into the future for his 31 boys. It's part of his job. "I feel them studying me," he says. They watch how I stand, how I dress, how I speak. That's the best part of my job. I'm helping raise them in a sense. I talk to them about everything," Rod continues. "I tell them, for instance, about going back to the neighborhood. My old friends laugh at me about not having a child yet. They don't support my wife and me in our plans to wait until we're ready. Instead, they say, 'What's the matter with you? You can't make a baby?' And I admit that bothers me. I don't like to hear it, but it doesn't change who I am or what I think is right. I tell my students that's what life is," Rod says. "It's about struggles, it's about problems, it's about failing, but trying again. I say, let's talk about this, let's write about this. And before you know it," he says, a grin creasing his broad face, you've got them working fractions.